Hi everyone, this is Ved. In this video, we will see functions in Python. Let me define a function, then I will describe it. Def calculate sum, parenthesis, then parameters a and b, and return a plus b. Here def is the Python inbuilt keyword that we use whenever we need to write a function followed by the function name, that is calculate sum, and the parenthesis. And in parenthesis we write the parameters, these are the variables a and b, and then we use another Python inbuilt keyword, that is return. Whenever we write a function and we write return, the function stops executing after return. Function name can be anything. You can write your name, my name, anything that will work here. Let me give you an example. Def, I'm just writing my name, then passing the parameters a and b, and return a plus b, and I'm going to call these two functions. Let's see the difference. Calculate sum, and I'm passing the arguments 2, 3. It will return the value 5, and now I'm going to call function with 2 and 3, the same arguments, and here we see the same result. So we see that whatever the function name you write, it is going to perform, but make sure whatever the function name you write should have some sense over here. If I just see the function name with, I cannot say what is inside this function, but if I see the function name as calculate sum, it tells me, it gives me an idea that the person whoever has written the function name as calculate sum is going to calculate something kind of summation in this function. So it gives me an idea that the person is going to add some values in this calculate sum function, whereas in wait function it doesn't say anything about that. We can store functions in variables as well. Let me write a variable, and I'm just copying this function and I'm storing in this variable, and I can perform various operations on it. Variable plus 2, here it gives me 7. Now let me check the type of this variable. It will be int. Here you see that whatever the value that has been returned by this function, that will be the type of this function. Here 5 is an integer, that's why the type of this function is integer. So var is giving us type as an integer, and we can perform various operations on integer, this variable with integers. Here I have written integer plus integer, that is 2 is also an integer. So 5 plus 2 gives me 7. Here we are reusing this function. Instead of adding 2 plus 3 plus 2, I'm just writing the function name that I have stored in a variable. So variable plus 2, this is giving me 7. Let me give you another example. I just write a function def which day, and I'm passing no parameters in parentheses, and then I'm returning good morning. Now let's check the type of this function. Think what that can be, and it should be a string. Wait, I haven't given this parenthesis. Yeah, so that's why wish day was a function. Here you see it's a string. Now if I pass this in a variable, I can store it in a variable wish day, and now I can perform various operations on it. I can concatenate it with a space and with my name. Here you say good morning Ved, and if I check the type of this variable, it is again a string. So as we say that functions are the block of codes, these are the lines of codes that we can reuse. Here you are seeing that we are reusing all these functions. Instead of writing 2 plus 3 plus 2, I'm just writing the function name that is stored in a variable, and the operation that I want to perform. So we generally say that functions are reusable, they are easy to handle. So these are the properties of functions. I will discuss more properties later on. People ask me, can we use print instead of return keyword in functions? Let's check. I'm just writing the same function over again, calculate sum, in parentheses passing the parameters, then print a plus b. Let me call this function calculate sum, and I'm passing the arguments 2 and 3. Here we see the result 5. I'm storing this in a variable 2, just copying and pasting it over here. It gives us 5. And now if I perform any operation with this function, let's see what we get. It will throw an error. Here you see it says none type plus int. Let's check the type of variable 2, and it says none type. Print returns type as none type, and we cannot perform any operation with none type. It is just to show in the console, or it just give the information. We cannot perform any operation with none type, and as you know that if we use return. I'm just copying and pasting it over here. Return a plus b, and I'm just storing this in a variable tree, or just let me write it quickly. Calculate sum 2 and 3 as an argument. Wait, I have written, okay, I'm just copying this name over here. Calculate sum. Here we see 5 and we can perform any operation on it. I'm just writing plus 2, and here we get. So whenever we use return, we can reuse that function and we can perform any operation with that function. But whenever we use print keyword in the function, we cannot perform any operation. It is just to print in the console that whatever the value we are getting. Here it just prints 5. We are getting 5 out of that function. That's why we don't use print, we use return, so that we can use that function throughout our code. Now let's discuss abstraction in function. Let me create a heading for this. Abstraction in function. It is an important topic for interviews. Let me write a function, then I will explain this. Def greet. I'm taking a parameter as name and returning using string hello space and then curly braces, and I'm passing name variable to this. And now I'm creating another function, def welcome. I'm passing no parameter in this. I will take input from user, so user input function by default returns a string, so we don't need to use type casting because we want the name of the customer. Enter your name, and then now I'm going to use the earlier function, that is greet function, and again the passing the parameter user input. I can use name or user input, anything you can use. Here we want the user input variable as a parameter, as an argument in greet function. That's why we are taking parameter as user input, and I'm going to store this in a variable called message. Let me explain this part. Why am I using user input instead of name? We have created a function that is greet that takes a parameter as name. It's just a variable. We can write anything instead of using the word name, and it is returning us this hello and the name. Here when I'm using this welcome function, we are taking input from user, and that input, whatever the variable user input we are getting, we want to use that in greet function, because as I already mentioned, it's just a variable. User input or name, it is just a variable. We can use anything. Here I want to use this variable user input so that I don't have to enter any name in this, and I'm storing this in a variable called message. And I will write print instead of return so that you can understand the importance of return and print. I will just write print message, and I'm going to call this function welcome. Enter your name. Let me write Ved. Here it says hello Ved. Here I have used print instead of return. See, if I use print over here in greet function, then I cannot reuse in this second function. That's why I have used return. As I told you earlier that return function can be reused in another function or in our code. Here I'm just reusing this function, this greet function. But I don't want to reuse this welcome function anywhere else. That's why I have written print over here. You can write return as well. Just to make you understand, I just used print instead of writing return. This is my final code, welcome. I don't want to write anything else. I don't want to use welcome function anywhere else in another function or throughout the code. That's why I have written print over here so that you can just see the result. It says hello Wayne. This is about return and print. And now come on to the topic, that is abstraction in functions. Abstraction in functions means you are using one function in another function. We are using greet function in welcome function, that is called abstraction. Using one function in another function, that is called abstraction. There is one more term that is generally asked in interviews, what is encapsulation. Here, just to simplify this welcome function, we have used external function, that is greet, in welcome function. That is called encapsulation. Encapsulation means writing some part of code separately. Here we have written all the complexities of greet over here just to use it as a variable in this welcome function. It is called encapsulation. Now we will see modularity in functions. Let me write a heading for this. Modularity in function. Let me write a function. Before that, I'm just writing a comment so that you can understand what function I'm going to write. Calculate area of a rectangle. I'm just writing a function for it, def calculate area, parenthesis, and the parameters length, width, and I'm returning length into width. This is what the area of triangle, length into width. Now I'm writing another function, calculate perimeter of a rectangle. Here for this, def calculate perimeter, again the parameters length, width, and I'm returning twice of 2 into length plus width. This is what the perimeter of a rectangle is. And now I'm just writing a main function, that is another function main, passing no parameters in this. I'm taking some user input in the variable length, input, enter the length of the rectangle, width equal to input, again I'm taking another input from user, enter the width of the rectangle, and I'm doing the typecasting, and here I'm using float because float can handle both integers and floats. And I'm going to use calculate area function over here as a variable, calculate area, length, width, it's CAL, calculate, and I'm giving it a variable name area. Similarly, I'm giving a variable name perimeter to calculate perimeter, length, width, and now I will print. Again, I'm using print here instead of return because I just want to print the result. I don't want to use main function onward. I will just write area of the rectangle is, I will pass this variable name over here. Similarly, print perimeter of the rectangle is perimeter. Now if I call the main function, here as we haven't passed any parameter in main function, I need to enter the length of the rectangle. Let's enter 2. Then width of the rectangle, let's enter 3. And here we see an error, calculate area. Okay, I haven't written this calculate area, it's A is missing over here. Just let me write it over again. 2, then width 3, and here we see area of rectangle is 6, that is 2 into 3, that is 6, and perimeter of rectangle is 10, that is 2 plus 3, that is 5, and 5 into 2 gives us 10. Now here let me explain the modularity in functions. Here you can see instead of writing all this calculate area and calculate perimeter in main function, I have written it separately so that it is quite easy to handle the errors if we get. As you saw that I just received an error over here, so I just corrected the main function instead of going into calculate perimeter or calculate area function. Here I can define modularity as breaking down a program into smaller pieces or smaller functions. These are like calculate area and calculate perimeter are the smaller functions that we are using in main function, so that it is easy for us to understand the code, and if we encounter any error we can simply debug the error if we have written functions in smaller pieces. That is the modularity in function. If you like the content, like and subscribe, and if you have any questions or any suggestions, comment below. Thanks, bye bye.